गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉट। गना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। Today we're going to go into the Indian Ocean region, and thereafter, once we finish off the Indian Ocean region, we'll take the open hour, and your questions are all welcome. Uh, I want to tell you that this is a continuation of what I did on Diego Garcia some time back. Right? It's the virtually the same continuation. So I'll start from there, and we'll see where we go from there. Okay. The first thing is, look, this is the Indian Ocean. Everybody, we've all seen the map. We've seen everything. We known all this. Uh, you see where the Chagos Archipelago is, and that's where we concentrated last week. Now we'll expand our horizons and see the other issues which are in the Indian Ocean. Okay. The next thing, look, the Indian Ocean has four choke points. Okay, very major issues which I let me highlight it further. Okay, the first thing is this is the Malacca Strait, the Strait of Hormuz, the Bab el Mandeb, and the Strait of Madagascar or the Madagascar Channel. So these four choke points virtually enable control of Indian Ocean completely. Okay, that's something which one has to keep in mind always. Now the next thing is the trade routes. I had explained the trade routes to you completely last time, but I'll go over them again so that we have clarity. You know, if you see the trade routes, the main trade route is from Suez Canal, which is here, right? Mediterranean Sea, Suez Canal, down the Red Sea, Bab el Mandeb, Gulf of Eden, south of India, or through the channels of the Maldives to Malacca Straits and beyond. Also from Cape of Good Hope, there are direct channels up the Madagascar channel up to the Red Sea and the Strait of Hormuz, and then straight across, cutting across through the Sunda and the Ombak Vetar states. So a whole lot of shipping, everything goes on in Indian Ocean. Probably one of the busiest oceans in the world. I would say the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean compete with each other in terms of trade and things like that. Okay. Now, what next? Let me change the thing. Okay, let's go back. So this is the kind of trade which you see in the Indian Ocean, right? You see in the top, the amount of shipping which goes on at any one point of time is humongous, right? Okay, now let's look at this again. The main islands in the Indian Ocean. What are the main islands? We come from top Lakshadweep, Maldives, Diego Garcia. We spoke of them. Then Seychelles, Mauritius, and Reunion. Now, and of course, you have the east coast of Africa, the Indian Peninsula, which juts into the whole place, and then the Indian Peninsula, which juts into the whole Indian Ocean, and the Indonesian archipelago, which is the western corner of Indian Ocean, and then you have Australia. Okay, now let's go a little further. Look, this is the only nation named after a country, India, Indian Ocean, India. No other nation in the world has a ocean named after a country. Now, a lot of people say, look, this is not India's ocean. It's just named after a country. And that's what China keeps yapping about. But that doesn't matter us. As far as we are concerned, this is Indian Ocean, and I view it as India's ocean. Others can view it any way they want. Okay, this is vital to world trade. It contributes immensely to global economic prosperity. More than 75% of world's maritime trade and 50% of global oil consumption goes through the IOR. Remember this, huge. Okay, okay. And this region is home to 33 nations and 2.3 billion people. That is the nations which ring the Indian Ocean, or the Indian Ocean rim, as they call it, or the Indian Ocean littoral also is another word which they use. Okay, the Indian Ocean region, it accounts for 80% of China's energy imports. Okay, and is essential for China's trade activities, making it a strategically and economically significant geography. And not only that, as we go along, you'll realize that bulk of uh, China's BRI trade, everything also goes through Indian Ocean. Indian Ocean is very critical to China. Okay, and that is why it wants to enter China. I mean, it wants to enter the Indian Ocean region. If it has problems in the Indian Ocean region, its economy will collapse. For the simple reason, if I go back, the main trade route that is from the Gulf, I mean, and the Gulf of Eden and the Hormuz Strait, everything comes here and then goes up. You choke this, China has choked. Every import out of China comes through this. So again, whether it's for imports or exports, this geography is very critical to China. Okay, what are Indian interests here? Indian interests are from the Gulf of Eden to the Malacca Strait. Let me tell you this. This is not something which is new. Way back in 2005, 6, Mr. Manmohan Singh laid it out for the first time. Till then, we were very fuzzy fuzzy about the whole affair. I think it was around 2004, 2005. He said Indian interests are from the Gulf of Eden to the Malacca Strait. And that's when he defined really, uh, and the first contours of Indian interests in the Indian Ocean came forth. Till then, we really didn't, bother too much about it. Okay. The next thing is you must understand there are a whole lot of major populations around. I told you 2.3 billion, but look at it from a slightly different point of view because this is one ocean which interacts with the landmass. Lot. A lot of people depend on this landmass, and the interaction between the landmass and the Indian Ocean is huge. What happens on the landmass affects the Indian Ocean, and what happens in the Indian Ocean rim lands affect the uh, ocean. So there's a lot of connectivity between the landmass and the ocean, like no other ocean. Okay, I have a look at it a little closer. See, you have 1.3 billion people of Africa, but even if you say 50% are Indian Ocean dependent. The complete 400 odd million of West Asia largely are dependent on the Indian Ocean. At least the Gulf uh, fiefdoms and the oil producing countries completely dependent on the Indian Ocean. Okay. Then, of course, India with its mammoth presence of, when I say India, the Indian subcontinent. I wouldn't like to call it South Asia anymore. It's the Indian subcontinent. The Indian subcontinent with 1.83 billion, including Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India, some of the most populous nations in the world. And then, of course, you have Indonesia and the countries of Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, those which have Thailand, which have an interest in the Indian Ocean direct. And then this extra regional power of China, though it's an extra regional power, it has tremendous interest because it has stakes here. So this is the kind of population which surrounds the Indian Ocean. Look, now I'm going to zoom out a bit, and we're going to talk of a little bit of the Indo-Pacific, because at some point of time you can't differentiate between what's happening in Indian Ocean and what's happening in the Pacific Ocean. The concept of Indo-Pacific is relevant. I'll talk about the Indo-Pacific separately, and I'll come back with these slides to connect some other day. But you have to understand the Indo-Pacific region is home to 8 of the top 20 economies. Okay, the Indian Ocean itself, when you look at it, you're looking at Saudi Arabia, India, Indonesia, and Australia are the 4 top 20 economies. So a lot of money is flowing here. And the other major economies have an interest here. Okay, then major conflict zones: West Asia, Israel, uh, Iran, India, Pakistan, China. Okay, then of course, though the Ukraine, war doesn't have an impact on the Indian Ocean or vice versa. It's there. You can't rule it out. So is what's happening in the South China Sea or Taiwan. That impacts the Indian Ocean region. Okay, and then there are, BRI and maritime disputes in the Indian Ocean region itself. So virtually, if you have a look at it, the Indian Ocean is host to 3 conflict areas direct, and then here I've not put other sub-conflicts or sub-national or sub-conventional conflicts like what's happening in Bangladesh, what's happening in Myanmar. And in fact, Myanmar is the key to the Indo-Pacific. Not many people look at it that way. It is that the center, it's the heart of the Indo-Pacific, to my way of thinking, is the Myanmar. And we've let it loose. Everyone has let it loose, right? So it has anyone who gains Myanmar gains a lot in the Indo-Pacific. But that the Chinese understand. I don't think even we have understood it that much. I don't think our government has also understood it that well. Okay. Now, some of the biggest defense spenders ring the Indian Ocean. You call it the Middle East, whole lot of Middle East countries, including Israel, Iran, Pakistan, India, Singapore, Indonesia, and of course Australia. At this point of time, if you look at the Indo-Pacific as a whole, count in China, South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. And many of these countries are dependent either on USA, Russia, or China. And these days, India is also coming up. So the biggest defense spenders are in this area, and also all the big defense suppliers have an interest here. That's the importance of the Indian Ocean region. Now, there's another thing: major disasters happen around in the rim of the Indian Ocean. Look at the thing. I'll not go into the details. Whether it's cyclones, whether it's tsunamis, whether it is earthquakes, the works. So you have wars, you have disasters. Both these, to sort them out, you need strong armies. Okay, right. Now let's get back to the geography of the Indian Ocean and understand this geography, because then you'll understand who has a play where. Like I said earlier, we spoke of Lakshadweep, we spoke of Maldives and Diego Garcia. You have the Andaman Nicobar chain on the east, and Seychelles, Mauritius, and Reunion in the almost midwest of Indian Ocean, and the western is the African continent. These 3 ridges, which I spoke when I spoke to you about Diego Garcia, also dominate this area. Okay, so these 3 ridges, whoever controls these 3 ridge lines or the underwater geographic features, that is the Andaman Nicobar chain, the Lakshadweep, Maldives, Diego Garcia chain, and then Seychelles, Mauritius, and Reunion, they control the Indian Ocean. you need to have a base in these places to really control Indian Ocean. And luckily, we have the Andaman Nicobar completely with us. Uh, Lakshadweep is ours. I spoke to you about Diego Garcia, where we have a stake and we are anchoring uh, USA to be there. And Maldives is in our grip. 6 months back, Maldives was seemed to be slipping away, but now it's coming back. And Seychelles and Mauritius are good friends. There's no problem. We have a base called Agalega in Seychelles. In the north, let me, yeah, this is Oman. At Oman, uh, you have this port called Duqm, which you operate, which will become very important for our navy to operate from. Because Oman doesn't want to get upset by Yemen. Oman doesn't want to get upset by Iran or Saudi Arabia or UAE. So Oman banks quite a bit on its relationship with India to keep it secure and safe. Okay, and so you have these ports which are important, and for one, India has a firm footing all over. I mean, you have to understand we have a very firm footing all over. It's something which not many people will appreciate, the fact that you have this kind of a firm footing. And a lot of this firm footing doesn't come from hard power, it comes from soft power, it comes from trust. People trust us. It also comes from something called you are the first responder in this area. For all natural disasters, you are the first responder, including water. Okay? And that people know. For China, it's a matter of tyranny of distance. Remember this word, tyranny of distance. China has to come all the way through the South China Sea, through the Malacca Strait, and then come anywhere near here to be effective. It cannot, no nation will take the risk of, snapping its ties with India and going completely with China. In fact, Maldives is the ideal test case for this, where everyone now knows, look, you can't do without India in the Indian Ocean. That's what makes the Indian Ocean India's ocean. Okay. Now, of course, just to reiterate, these four: the Strait of Hormuz, your, Bandar Abbas, right? Not Bandar Abbas, your Bubble Mandab, Strait of Bubble Mandab, Madagascar, channel, and this are the main Malacca Strait are the main thing. Whoever controls this controls the Indian Ocean. Okay, and that is where it's important that the choke point for China is there. It's got a base at Djibouti, but it is the Indian Navy which controls the eastern coast of the Africa for Somali piracy, anti-piracy operations and all that. Which other navy is dominant here? It's the Indian Navy and the American Navy. The other navies are all showcase. Okay, and Chinese Navy doesn't do anything, incidentally. I don't know why it's hanging around there. What are the challenges in the Indian Ocean? And the challenges are huge. I put here. There's disasters, which I told you. There are conflicts, which I explained to you. There is piracy off the Somalian coast. Not only off the Somalian coast, there's a lot of piracy which happens on around Andaman Nicobar also. Terrorism. Okay, terrorism is, though it's land based, projects itself into the sea. And don't forget, terrorism come piracy, which affected Maldives long back. And someone wanted to do a coup against Maldives and throw the government off and take over Maldives. Till we intervened and restored the situation. So terrorism is a problem here. Illegal fishing. There are reports, mind you, of the Chinese fishing fleet coming and doing fishing in this area, somewhere where this pointer I've shown, that red pointer. Okay, if you're not able to see it fully, I'll show it. Yeah. So it's somewhere here in this area that Chinese fleets, fishing fleets, have come to do fishing and illegally. Okay. Then there is this thing of dark shipping. What is dark shipping? Dark shipping is generally those ships which don't disclose their location and carry cargo without, it's underhand. And who are the ones who are involved in it maximum? Iran and China. Iran and China are the ones who are into dark shipping. They don't transmit anything, nothing. You can't stop it because it's so vast a thing. And probably they have other channels through which they communicate. We don't know, but they don't emit. Okay. Then there's drug smuggling. Drug smuggling is rampant in the Indian Ocean region. Okay. Then there are geopolitical ambitions of nations because, like I said, you control the Indian Ocean region and you control a lot which is happening in the world, right? So, to that extent, the Indian Ocean region is very important. And then, of course, the last challenge which all nations face is China's rise. So, we'll talk of all these uh, in bits and parts. Uh, I'll not go touch upon all these, one by one, that you can fathom for yourself. But let me touch upon certain issues which drive these factors. Okay. First, who are the players here? Right? If you see from the top, there are a lot of players in this area. The players are, India, of course, which is at the top, China, USA. These three are the main players. China, India, and USA, followed by France. France has territory here. The French Reunion Islands are its sovereign territory. Okay. Then the UK. UK has its interest through Diego Garcia. Okay, and nowhere else. Uh, okay. Then you look at all the other countries, Turkey and all these which come into play. Have a look at it a little closer so that you see the thing, right? Uh, yeah. So you have countries like UAE. How UAE and Turkey, how do they get their influence over this area? Because UAE, of course, Dubai, right? And that's there. And even Japan has interest. Japan is a big player because it has tremendous amount of investment in these areas through loans and building and all that. Okay, right? So you have the Muslim principalities of Turkey, UAE, and Saudi Arabia who have a thing here, and of course Russia. Russia is a completely extra regional power which has interests here and is a player here. And why is it a player here? Because it supplies arms to many countries in this area. The old USSR legacy makes Russia also a player in this area. So these are the players. But like I said, the main three players are India, China, and USA. The Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and UAE influence the Muslims in this area. Okay, and they have Turkey mainly. It's more through ethnic connections. But if you look at Saudi Arabia and UAE, it's the royal power. Okay, that's what makes them a big player in this area. And then, of course, Saudi Arabia and UAE have influence over Pakistan. They have influence over the Muslim nations of Africa. Not forgetting Malaysia and Indonesia also. Okay. So there are a lot of players in this area who, which are the countries who trade, which are the countries which trade maximum. You have a look at it, it is China, USA, Japan, India. That's why I said Japan has a lot of trade. That's why it makes Japan an important player in this area. UAE, Germany, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Russia, France, and Australia in the descending order. Okay. India's trade might not be much, but its linkages in this area are huge. Remember that. Okay, if I put it on a graph, this is how it is. The big graph, the one which is taking off, is China. If you look at it on the thing also, China virtually laps most of the other countries. About next four countries put together is almost equal to China. That's how the whole story is. Okay. Now, France has a role in the Indian Ocean region, which I said earlier, because the Reunion Island is part of France. It's sovereign territory. Now, US. At one point of time, US had maximum, trade links with many of these areas, but not anymore. But what it has is significant arms transfer or other arms. It is the most significant supplier of arms to these countries, whether you call it Egypt, you call it Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, okay, and India, Pakistan, right? You look at Malaysia, Indonesia, and Australia. Yeah, all these countries are dependent on arms. So, and it's got the biggest security presence. The complete central command of USA is around here with Qatar, and you have this island of Diego Garcia. So, plus it has, though there are no bases in Indonesia and all these places, uh, Australia, it has a strategic partnership. It's an ally. So anytime US forces can get deployed in Australia. So the security presence of USA is unmatched. You have to understand that. It's only matched to a large extent by India because India is here, complete Indian Navy is here. In fact, in the Indian Ocean, Indian Navy is probably the biggest navy. It might Others might have navies outside; they can bring more here, but to maintain them, they need India. That is why India and USA have this agreement, logistics, the memorandum of understanding, LEMOVA. Okay, as far as USA is concerned, I explained last time also the importance of Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia is a base from which USA can control. There's Diego Garcia, which it can control Indian Ocean. Guam is the next base with which it can control the Pacific. So both these bases make USA the strongest naval or the strongest security provider in this area, or the strongest or the preeminent military force in this area, notwithstanding the fact that China has the biggest navy. China doesn't have reach in this area, right? Now, let's look at China. China, these are the BRI countries. They all ring, of course, forget about South America and all, or Western Africa. But if you look at it, China has a huge presence through BRI all around us, or all around the Indian Ocean. And then, see the trading partners in the Indian Ocean region. Right, the various colors, notwithstanding, China trades with all of them in various forms. That's the whole idea. If you have a look at it at peace, those of you who are studying for exams and all that, when you look at it, uh, China trades with for some it imports maximum, or some countries import maximum from China. For some countries, China is also, they export maximum to China. So the bilateral trade between any country of this area is maximum with China. Okay, now what is China's game in this whole story? You have to understand. Now, as you see here, what I put down here, China desires to be a superpower with a two ocean axis. Now, I have to go a little on a tangent. Remember, any country which desires to be a superpower has historically controlled two oceans. Okay, look at Russia, the North Sea, and the Sea of Japan, Vladivostok, and all that. Pacific, basically. Okay, USA has the Pacific and the Atlantic. Britain had the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. Okay, India, though it's not a superpower, but it has two seaboards, the western and the eastern. That's what gives capability. But look at China's geography. China doesn't have a geography to control two oceans. That is why it wants to control, you know, through Myanmar, it wants to control. This is Chokfu, wants to control from here and enter the Bay of Bengal. Okay. So, what is China? I mean, if I look at it from a point form of view, as of today, China has full control over the South China Sea. Its BRI and CPC are successful in terms of control. Whether they are give return of interest or not is a different story. Strategically, they have hold. Now, we have been speaking of India, which has been contained by the string of pearls. Though the string of pearls are broken and it's no more valid, but from a Chinese perspective, it's still there. China has a considerable presence in the Indian Ocean, right? Can it overcome the Malacca dilemma? It's a question mark, right? China desires a major base at Gwadar, Pyaku, Maldives, or Hambantota. Without a base in this region, China cannot achieve its two ocean dream. A base in Gwadar will give it access to the Indian Ocean, and Pakistan desires that. That I've shown. This is, Gwadar, Maldives, Hambantota, and of course Chokpu. These stars are at little different places, but that's just understand that. This for larger understanding. Then China has tremendous port investments in the Indian Ocean region. Right? All these ports along these are all port investments. What are these port investments? In all these places, it's either building the port or operating that port. So there's always that lurking fear that China can use these ports for military purposes. So if it can use these ports for military purposes, does it need a base? So it might not need a base. But the flip side is, just because you're operating a port doesn't mean that's a base, because a base means you need to have refit, you need to have maintenance spares, which is quite a bit for ships. It's not only for ships, you need for all weapon systems and all that, plus ammunition. Where do you keep ammunition in a port which you operate? So there are both sides of the whole story for Chinese port investments in the Indian Ocean region. But a combination of BRI and these port investments make China a strong player here. Okay, they have 17 ports in the IOR with some degree of Chinese involvement. And they have massive projects like deep water ports and terminals at Gwadar and Lamu, and construction of small terminals like the livestock terminal at Port Sudan. That is in Sudan. Okay. Plus, it is involved in construction of 13 or 17 ports. That's what I told you earlier. And they have financial involvement in 8 projects. China funds. China has 2 forms of funding, which many people don't understand. It is not direct state funding alone. Chinese firms fund, right? So that is off the book funding, and the rates for that are never known, right? To some extent, sovereign funding is through BRI, but other funding is through the Chinese companies. So you have to understand, if Chinese debts are, say, in the region of 10% officially, they're actually about 20 to 25%, double that, because the second half is through the Chinese companies, right? Those countries where China is constructing ports, right, are indebted to China already, like Kenya, Pakistan, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Djibouti, and all these have significant Chinese debt. So will they be able to withstand Chinese pressure if the Chinese military has to operate from there? Is always a question mark. Okay, though Kenya doesn't like it. Kenya is now, that is why you see Kenya is now shifting, and it is using India as a hedge. So is Sri Lanka. Okay. And Djibouti, luckily, just next to Djibouti base is an American base and the French base and the Italian base also. So Djibouti, I don't see it as a major base, but of significance, except for anti-piracy operations and for the convoy protection, convoy of their import-export merchant protection. But the other countries can be susceptible to Chinese pressure. Okay, of course, we're talking of Djibouti and Gwadar. Let me take out this whole thing and see. This is Djibouti, okay, and this is Gwadar. That interrelationship you need to understand. In Gwadar, in Djibouti, China can hold ships. In Gwadar, it can hold everything as a major base. The synergy between Djibouti and Gwadar is huge because those who control Djibouti and Gwadar will control the complete energies and trade routes, one of the most important trade routes of the world. So that is the thing which comes into focus when we talk of China. Okay, right. Uh, no, China last year held a Indian Ocean conference. Okay, all the countries of the Indian Ocean region it called to China to hold a conference. Who was the lone absentee? India. Of course, later on, Australia also withdrew from the whole story. And one more country I'm forgetting of the thing, they went. It called 19 countries, all of them went. All of them went because they had no choice. Okay. But otherwise, there is something called the IORA. IORA is Indian Ocean Rim Association, where India is a major player. Every year there is a uh, uh, conference of the IORA. Significantly, in IORA, China is not a invitee or it's not a member, and that is why China has held its own conference out of IORA. So these things one must understand. I would suggest those of you appearing for exams read a bit on IORA and the Chinese conference on Indian Ocean, which they have conducted. It'll okay. Now you look at the hotspots. You have on one end Israel Palestine, where who are the players in this? China, Iran, H3, that is Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas, USA, India, and Pakistan. In the Afghanistan and that belt, again, you have China, Iran, USA, India, Pakistan, and Russia. Look at Myanmar, where players today, Myanmar, when I say Myanmar, let's include Bangladesh also. Myanmar and Bangladesh, China, ASEAN, India, USA, Japan, and Russia are major players. Then, if you look the other side, which is part of the Indo-Pacific, you have Taiwan, parcels, and Senkaku Islands, where the players are China, USA, in Australia, and Japan, and ASEAN. So you have three major hotspots here which you have to handle. Oh, right. I mean, I will not go into each hotspot because that's a subject by itself, and we'll cover it as we go along. Someday we'll talk of Afghanistan also. Okay, what are the major issues in the Indo-Pacific? I'm talking of Indo-Pacific because then you'll get a wider idea. First is, of course, nuclearization, which is going on between, what shall I say, South Korea and Japan. Today, people are talking of nuclearization in South Korea and Japan because China, Russia, and USA are also nuclear states. Of course, don't forget North Korea there. So that's nuclearization. There is a major issue. Okay. Now, when you look here, look at Afghanistan and the nuclear triangle there. Now it's no more a nuclear triangle; it will be a nuclear quadrangle with Iran also on the verge of becoming nuclear. Then you have West Asia. Major issues for it, which impact the Indian Ocean are in West Asia. Terrorism is a problem. Piracy is a problem. Energy flows is a problem. Resources is an issue. Trade is a major issue. Then in the Indian Ocean proper itself, you have maritime security and BRI. And when you look at the South China Sea, you're looking at South Chinese assertion and their aspiration to be a superpower. But that's going to impact the Indian Ocean completely. Without the Indian Ocean, China cannot become a superpower. Okay, that is something one has to understand fully. Then, like I said, today there is a nuclear hexagon in the Far East with China, Japan, South Korea, North Korea, Russia, and USA. Though South Korea and Japan are not nuclear states, they're tending to be slowly. In the West, you have in this area, you have Iran, you have Israel, you have USA, which is headquartered there with its own nuclear arsenal, whatever it has out there, Pakistan, India. And of course, China also is hanging around there. So either side of the Indian Ocean is completely nuclearized. So the nuclear environment in the Indian Ocean is pretty heavy. Okay, and then of course I spoke to you. This is the Chagos Archipelago, which is the dividing line of the Indian Ocean. You have one triangle on the east, which is India, Andaman Nicobar Islands, and Diego Garcia, and the other one, which is Agalega, Diego Garcia, and India. Now you control these triangles, you control Indian Ocean. But if you open your mind out, I mean, I will not, I'll go to that a little later. Okay, let me go to that and I'll come back here. Okay. Now, if you open your mind out, okay, you have to see there's another triangle which will form in the Pacific, which is between Japan, Guam, and the Malacca Straits or Singapore, Australia, that triangle. So it is these three triangles which you have to hold if you have to contain China, right? And you need to also deny bases to China, and you have to somehow deny port access. Port access will always be there for civil movement. That's not an issue. For military access, you have to hold. And of course, there are other issues which are connected with this. That is, we have a live problem with the LAC, and Xinjiang is also a problem in the larger run. So the LAC impacts the Indian Ocean through India. The debate in India is always, what do you do? Do you have a maritime strategy or a continental strategy? So this balance is something which impacts the thing. So when I come back here, I've shown you these two triangles. This orange ones, that is this quadrangle of Gwadar, Chokfu, Hambantota, and Djibouti is what China is aiming. The day China has this quadrangle complete or part of it, remember, we are in trouble. Okay, that is why we are assertive on Hambantota. We have to somehow ensure that Chokfu doesn't fall. Okay, and there are issues which are happening. Maybe someday I'll give it a little more detail as things open out. Gwadar is going to be a base. In fact, the rumor is that this will be the first overseas command, out of area command of China will be headquartered at Gwadar. But then there's a long way to go because Gwadar has other issues. Djibouti, like I said, is largely an administrative base at this point of time. Okay, so this is all about the Indian Ocean region. Okay, so this is the whole story, the two ocean theory and all that. So I hope I have explained everything to you in detail, and yeah, we'll take on your yeah live. I see your comments. Yeah. So I finished. With this, I'll take on your questions pertaining to the IOR as also your general part of the open hour. Okay. At the end, in fact, before I go ahead, I'd like to welcome Murali Ravali for becoming a YouTube member. Thanks a lot for this. You're welcome, and we are happy to have you here. Okay, now let me talk from the top. Yeah, Jai Hind, Maulana ji, Jai Hind, Akash, RD, Jai Hind, Vishwanathan also, Namaskaram. Yeah, Sabesan, I always look forward to your excellent presentation. Yeah, to the ordinary layman, only thing is, Sabesan, I don't have enough people watching. So I'd request all your friends, everyone, they must come live and watch. If they can't come live and watch, they can watch it later. Please pass it on to everyone. It's the Indian Ocean, and no one can take that away. I agree with you completely, Lata. Don't didn't realize how blessed we are. So I hope I put something across today, which is important. And Tibetan monk, how are you? Mhm. USA based in Diego Garcia that will harm India's interest in the Indian Ocean in future. No, it won't. That's what I said. We are biased. We don't do normal analysis. If you do logical analysis, it won't. In fact, USA will depend on India in future for this, and that's why we have all this strategic partnership. So I would suggest, Adi, have a look at that thing on Diego Garcia which I spoke of. Uh, I did that video last week on Diego Garcia. Go through that, and then you'll understand the connection between these two. Uh, Modi's two-pronged politics of violence is bleak for India's future. Forget about that. We're not going to talk of it. We're not going to talk of politics. Please don't get politics here. Politics of violence. Yeah, only ocean named after a country, something to be proud of. Yes. Uh, Yeah, basically IOR is the Bharat Mahasagar. Classically, it is the Hind Mahasagar. Okay. Uh, yeah, thanks a lot, Vikram. Okay. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. Um, yeah, I was impressed by your knowledge in yesterday's session. Well, yesterday is yesterday. Uh, you must understand, I'm a professor in aerospace. Okay. Uh, I don't know, I'm proud of it. And you must also understand, I mean, I've stayed in ISRO, I've stayed in SHAR for over 3 months. I was involved with the first Agni flight and the second Prithvi flight of this country. So there's very little I don't know about both these. Okay. So geopolitics is my hobby. My main job is aerospace. Yeah, now I don't see many questions. Yeah, Gaurang, Indian subcontinent, that's what we should speak of. Okay. Why is Madagascar not appearing in conversation regarding Indian Ocean? Looks like a very strategic look. It is a strategic location, Madagascar. We have good relations with them. We also have a partnership with them for oil and things like that, and operating facilities out there. The Madagascar channel is very important. At some point of time, our relations with Madagascar were not good, but not now. We are very good with them. It's been 3 years now. Why Russia is not using Air Force to pound Ukraine as India uses Russian aircraft? Do we need to worry? And why during anti-terror operations on ISIS in Iraq, India didn't join? Yeah, look, Russia doesn't have the capability to take over Ukraine. So what if whatever it uses? I think Russia has gone to the depth of it where it can go. Beyond that, it will be counterproductive for Russia to enter Ukraine. Remember this. It will then have to start looking over its back, and it has to deploy too many troops to go further. Its lines of communication will become long, so it can't go. Plus, it has then the moment it goes in further, its economy will start getting hit adversely very badly. So you now it has pounded Ukraine enough. It has pounded with whether you pound it by air force or missiles, it doesn't matter. Now, all these firepower, Beyond a point comes a point of diminishing returns, like economy. After that, you have to be on ground. Now, ultimately, the political end game with Putin is not to hold ground. So that's the reason. Now, why during anti-terror operation on ISIS in Iraq, India didn't join? Because you have stakes in Iraq, you have stakes in Iran. Now, when you go uh, as a part of U.S. coalition forces, then you're an ally of USA, and that means you had to take a side. That would have pitted you against a lot of Muslim countries. Because at that point of time, you must remember, not many people were in favor of USA going into Iraq. Even we were not in favor of USA going into Iraq. We were very clear. We wanted every USA to be fixed in Afghanistan or focus on Afghanistan, which they didn't. Because they didn't focus on Afghanistan, they lost the whole story. They lost the plot actually. Okay, what is the fleet size of following navies approximate? I don't have the figures, I'll tell you some other day. A study of Chola military fleet management and Chhatrapati Shivaji and Admiral Angre's Maratha navies would give us a head start on the present management of the IOR. Not really. Let me be very clear about it. What they used then, how they went and did their expeditionary fleets, and what they did, we don't know. The Marathas didn't go deep. They didn't go and start conquering Africa. They went up to the Ratnagiri coast and up and down and had a hold, and through that they could transfer uh, forces from south to north without land, transgression. They go by the sea. They used it more for that. Whereas the Cholas went uh, and they took religion along with them. The Cholas used Hinduism quite a bit to go there and trade. They used trade, and through trade they got that. So and at that time, those empires or those kingdoms of that side were not very strong. Even the Chinese were not strong. So it was a monopoly. It's a big difference from then to now. Considering the recent events by Canada, we'll talk of Canada. Is the West trying to control India from executing its economic aspiration? David Healy and Many Kalistans. I agree with you. There's no doubt about it. This whole story is, to my way of thinking, Canada is only a cat's paw. Look, there are two sides to this story. Canada has its problems, and Trudeau wants to survive, so he's challowing his game. USA has found this as an opportunity to twist India's tail. As simple as that. First time hearing about dark shipping, so cool. There's not only dark shipping, there's white shipping, gray shipping, and dark shipping. The three things. Maybe one day I'll talk about it separately. Swing countries, they can be very problematic in terms of danger. I agree with you. There's no doubt about it. How about seeking cooperation from Israel to make our own aircraft engines? We could. Yeah. Will our drug-based challenges be worse than USA? No, I don't think so. We don't have that kind of problem. Considering Afghanistan and Pakistan wish the worst for India and would not go. No, don't have that much of a problem as this thing. I think even in Punjab, we've been able to control it. Does the Indian Navy use US base at GARCIA? I think this is key to effective surveillance. At some point, it will. At this point, it is not. That's the understanding, isn't it? We can. And part of this is if you go back to that presentation on Digogasha, which I gave, Digogasha main will be with USA. But what about the other archipelago? There are about 60 odd islands there. Mauritius can't handle it. Invariably, they'll come to India. So we will have a role there. Don't worry. Which nation play role of menace in IOR sea lanes? One is Somalia. Which are the other troublemakers? At some point of time, it was Madagascar, but now it is okay. North Korea doesn't have a role in IOR. Just forget it. They don't have a navy worth its name also, right? It doesn't go out much. It's basically coastal navy. So it's basically Somalia, and the one navy which extra regional navy which impacts Indian Ocean hugely is the Chinese navy. It's been 3 years now. Why we've spoken about this already. Uh, Seems that Indian Ocean will be the next battleground if and when a World War III happens. Definitely, there's no doubt about it. Uh, who has more poverty and economic disparity, China or India? You'll be surprised. Poverty, India has more. Disparity, China has more. Okay. Okay, ये तो छोड़ो. How is terminal high altitude defense anti-missile capability compared to that? Okay, what I'll do is one day I'll compare the two. I'll do a thing of both, what it is. So just wait till then. The Chinese ports under the management in Sri Lanka is arrogance on display, and same applies to Gwadar. Bottom line, can they militarize them without? No, they can't. Gwadar they can militarize, not Sri Lanka. What is the livestock terminal? They actually take livestock out from the terminal, basically for cattle and sheep to go from there. That's the reason. Yeah, and China imports which livestock from how many countries? That's something, that story which is separate. I'll have to see that separately. South of IR is Antarctica. What are the long-term strategic goals of Bharat for Antarctica? Can Bharat ever lay a territorial claim on any part of Antarctica? There's a Antarctica Convention where each country has gone and put up its base there. We already have two bases out there. Gangotri has been there for a huge, long time. So we have our interest there. As far as territorial integrity and all that is a matter of time, but people respect that if there's an Indian base, there is, in any case, these bases are only small areas. They're not large things. There's no habitation outside these bases. Okay. How do you see Pakistani foreign minister's informal interaction with our external affairs minister? That is normal. It happens. कुछ तो बात हुआ होगा, but no one will tell. Is there any plan for India to develop a base in Menikoy Island? We already started. There is a base already there. So, in fact, I did it when I did the Maldives series. There's a base already there. सर हमारी राजधानी में हुए ब्लास्ट के संदर्भ में कुछ बताएं. I didn't know कोई ब्लास्ट हुआ है अभी. I was busy doing something else. So let me see, maybe tomorrow. Thanks a lot. It's a nice presentation. Thank you. Okay. With Ukrainians and Houthis doing very good with unmanned drones and craft, do we also need to heavily invest in these technologies? Yes, we must. And we are. Let me put it that way. As a novice, I feel that submarines will be a big part of controlling the IOR. Completely agree with you. Why not build only SSNs in which we have kept? Yeah, look, you can't. Dekho, ice creams are good. They taste nice, right? But can you only live on ice cream? You can't. You need to have balance, ना? कभी चावल भी खाना पड़ता है, दही भी खाना पड़ता है, रोटी भी खाना पड़ता है, पनीर भी खाना पड़ता है. एक ही चीज पे निर्भर हो तो प्रॉब्लम होता है. So you cannot. You have to have balance. India's huge peninsula naturally enables power projection into IOR using more economical land-based means like air bases. Why hasn't India gone for weapons like backfire bombers plus matter of cash? You don't have that much money to do all that. So we will in due course. Why is it the birthplace of Islam, Arabia, and other Gulf countries are becoming open and tolerant, whilst people in Indian subcontinent are becoming more radical and calling for Sharia? This is fundamentally because of the fact that Pakistan and Bangladesh are more revisionist in nature. And I'm going to talk of revisionism in Bangladesh shortly, maybe this week. Because what's happening in Bangladesh, is revisionism. Pakistan is anyway complete revisionist state. So they will talk what they want. They don't have any history also. Yeah, should India also invest in building artificial islands around the straits? We have Andaman Nicobar. What more do you want? You have I showed you the Chagos archipelago today. It's all completely under your control. You have Agaliga, you have Dukum Port. Why do you need to put something in between? And except these archipelagos, I spoke to you, those three lines, there's no other place you can have artificial islands. Remember that. Thank you for providing, sir, for providing such knowledge. My honor and my duty. How do we balance the need to develop Andaman Nicobar to exert supremacy in AOR yet protect the extremely fragile nature of these islands? They are a natural paradise. See, first and foremost, you don't need the entire chain of islands. You need about 3-4 points which you have to militarize. That you can do and leave it at that. We are doing that way only. We don't. We are not. Military presence is not there in all islands. If you've been there, it's in Port Blair. It's in Andaman Nicobar. It's at the lowermost point called Ross Island, and then I'm forgetting the point to the north. It's about 4 or 5 places only. As long as Pakistan exists, India is not safe. I don't agree with you. We are pretty safe. Pakistan is no. Gaurav Arya, no, I'll not invite him. Don't worry. You have to talk of something bigger when you come to this. Is there any plan for India to reduce the trade deficit? Oh, we have a lot of plans. We don't achieve it. That's a problem. If we invest in our internal waterways, would that help in logistics in case of war? Completely. It will. And our Sagarmala is all about this. We have to invest. There's no choice. We don't have a choice. Why don't we have a presence in Pacific? There are plenty of islands there. It will enable us to have presence in 2 oceans. यार वो तो बहुत दूर की बात है. पहले तो नॉर्मल पावर तो बन जाओ, सुपर पावर बाद में बनेंगे. In any case, people like you in the Pacific Island group, which is north of Australia, you'll always get when you have the capability to go there. Abhi you don't have the capability to go there. Should we fund Pakistani allied to do our bidding since they are broke? No, not at all. Let them do what they want. They're breaking. Why do you want to do anything? They'll slowly break and become useless. You have to understand your own strategy with Pakistan. Yeah. Why does this new BRICS payment system amount to anything special? Or new, what impact, if any, will it have? Do we gain any advantage from it? Does it compete with our own UPI, RuPay? Will we join? We are joining, that is for sure. What are the contours of this BRIC payment system? I'm not very clear. I've read about it, but I'm not very clear. So I'll not do a second guess. So what I'll do is I'll let the BRICS summit be held. Then we'll come to know what the whole story is all about, and we'll analyze it. It's a matter of time. Okay. Okay. Why periodic table in the background? Are you teaching metallurgy at IIT Madras? Greetings. I'm not teaching metallurgy there. It's just that I put it. It's original thing. In fact, my daughter had this nice post, so I said just put it. It's good. Instead of putting all nonsense, it's good to put the periodic table in something scientific. It also tells all of you that I'm not a wishy-washy, flashy channel who talks nonsense without knowing. I can put all those mementos which I've collected, which are all packed in a bag. But I would like to be having a more analytical and intellectual approach, and not hathoda kind of a thing normally army people are good at. Do we do extensive mapping of the ocean floor in the South China Sea the way China does? No, you have to understand why China does all this mapping, and all this nonsense. because China doesn't know how to navigate all these. China has not been a seafaring nation. You don't get this capability overnight, and they want to operate subs deep. We have this knowledge, so we're not that worried about. Okay, I think India has the capability, given our unique geography, to become a dominant naval power like the UK did through the last. And yeah, it's a matter of time. I agree with you. Okay. It is said that Bharat has 14 island territories. Please shed light on this as set. Why information about these 1400 islands is not widely spread to foot. I don't know about the number, 1400 island territories. I don't know. But what we have is the Minicoy, Lakshadweep and Minicoy group of islands and the Andaman group of islands, right? So both these are our island territories. Whether they have 1400 islands, I'll have to check. I'll confirm it back next time we talk of the Indo-Pacific thing. Okay. So the last question. Yeah, guns have to. No, it's not that. It's not only the matter of guns and metallurgy. It's also your nuclear capability. It's also your energy. A lot of things depend on understanding chemistry. Okay, you don't understand chemistry and the chemical fundamentals of this thing, metals and atoms and molecules and things like that. You can't be a good defense expert. That's why I say you will get something original here, because I make a attempt to understand the physics and the chemistry and the basic science involved in any weapon system, and only then I analyze it and speak. And I've been in this business now for a number of years, so that's how it is. Our issues with the US seem to have pushed us to improve ties with China. Can we ever benefit from military cooperation with them in distant, faraway parts of the world, or are we enemies across the globe? Something one day, one of these days, I'm going to talk of this issue. What is at stake? In fact, I did speak a little when I spoke about that thing of unlimited turmoil and our approach to the problem in Canada. Look, we have three paths. We have to deal with USA, China, and Russia, and how we have to deal with them. I'll do a full-fledged thing on that someday. Okay, thanks a lot. All of you attended. Last but not the least, if you like this video, please press that like button, thumbs up, and get your friends on. I'm not getting enough people to watch. But more importantly, yesterday I spoke with the Tibetans here, with a lot of young Tibetans I spoke, and the response was fantastic. So tomorrow, I'm going to do what I spoke, Tibet and the way forward. It'll be a good thing. A lot of people said I spoke something completely different. So join in tomorrow evening, right? I'll do JBJP. I'll do something about Sagarmala one of these days. The problem is, I do all this, I don't get the response, which I want. I want more people to, but I'll still do it. If you ask, I'll do it. Okay, I'll do it as part of maybe next week. A lot of the issues, right? Okay then. Thank you. Good evening and Jai Hind till tomorrow evening, 8 o'clock.